Hello, my name is Keerthi Krishnamurthy and I'm here to answer some of the data analysis analytics questions. Here we go. The first one. What does CRISP DM methodology for data mining entail? What does the data analyst do in this step? CRISP DM methodology, which stands for Cross Industry Standard Process for Data Mining, is a thorough, structured data mining process which is used, of course, for data mining. It has 6 steps: business understanding, data preparation, modeling, evaluation, and deployment. Business understanding is understanding the objective of the business and what needs to be done, what does the end goal look like. Data understanding is where we pull the data, gather it, and check the quality if there is any missing data or if there are any inconsistencies. Here we do certain basic analysis like statistics to understand what data contains, what insights can be gathered. The third one is data preparation. Here, through cleaning of data, if there is any issues with the data, what can be done, those solutions are implemented. And here also we create new variables, derived ones from the data that we can use for the next step. Next is the modeling step. Here we create a model using some logics and algorithms to achieve our business goal. Here a lot of predictions and a lot of decisions are taken based on the data we have and the goal we are looking for. The next step is evaluation. Here we implement the model and see how it works. Maybe multiple people involved here to evaluate the model and see the outcome and rate it. The aggregate score will be considered to finalize if this model works for the business and the problem or not. If it works for the business problem, we go to the next step, that is deployment. Here we deploy the model that has been created, and deployment also involves monitoring the model for future analysis and see if it's doing correctly, and if there are any improvements or iteration needs to be done. If it needs more iterations, then it will be worked again through the similar steps. The next question we have is explain what needs to be done before we can forecast time series. In other words, what does time series analysis involve? So here time series is a data that has been collected over the period of time where time is considered as an independent variable, and we check how the data behaves throughout the time. Time series forecasting is where you look at the historical data and predict what happens in the future. So it can be done for single variable or multiple variable. Time series forecasting, before we implement a model to forecast what's going to happen next, there are different ways of doing it. Most of the models require the time series data to be stationary. That means all the errors. So when we plot it, data value against time, it needs to have a trend line that can be conclusive for the future prediction. So what we do is we clean out the line so that it gives us a proper solid line to predict the future. In this we use moving average or simple average or maybe even auto regression to clear out the errors and get a stationary data out of the time series data, and then the modeling can be done on it. The third question is discuss the main principles of data ethics as well as what companies or organizations could do to uphold these principles. Data ethics is basically certain regulations and laws that surrounds the collection of data, collection, storage, and how we use the data. There are 4 principles that we follow: privacy, transparency, accountability, and equality. Privacy involves says that every person has a right to their own data, and if we are collecting the data, it should be consented from the person, and then only it can be collected, stored, and used. Next one is transparency. Organizations that collect the data should be clear how the data will be used, and whom they are sharing, and what will be done with the private data, and what parts of private data they are collecting. um, Accountability is the organization that collects the data are accountable for how they use it. They should make sure that it's secure, it's safeguarded against all any stealing or any misuse of private and personal information. And the last one is equality. Equality is, if let's say the organization is building a model or something to predict something, and the data should be considered equally, and no specific treatment should be given to certain classes, for example race or gender, or maybe ethnicity or something. So next question is, imagine you're an analyst at a financial company and you have some concerns about bias in a way a predictive model was measured. How would you raise your concern with your manager? Make some suggestions how to avoid measurement biases in future. First of all, if I feel that there is a bias or any bias has been involved in a modeling, the first step needs to be investigating it, knowing what is done and why it is done, if there is any reason for using certain kind of bias in a modeling. It first of all, it shouldn't be done at any cost, but if it has been there, then first understanding what is the reason behind it would be the first step. And then probably I'll talk to the person who is involved, or any documentation regarding it, checking the code, understanding the background of it. If it was an unintentional modeling, then probably talking to the person and seeing how a corrective measure can be taken would be a great way to go. If it was not an accidental and it was an intentional one, then probably talking to my manager about how I feel about it, and what kind of it's a bias is against the data ethics, it's unethical. So raising a voice and sharing the concerns. If nothing, no action has been taken to do any corrections around this model, then maybe escalating it to the right authority is the best way to approach. How would I avoid any bias? Measurement bias would be to make sure that any bias related data removing from let's say if there is ethnicity or any race involved in collecting the data, and if it is, for example, if it is for a healthcare where those things actually matter, then probably use it. If it is not, for example, if it is a financial institution and they are targeting certain kind of ethnicity, it would be very wrong. Then removing such kind of data before doing the analysis would be the best way to avoid such things. The last question is, explain the difference between regression and classification model in predictive analysis. When would you use one of these models over other? So regression models are basically models, predictive models that can be created for quantitative variables where it's simple to say numbers are involved. For example, what would be the temperature? It's gonna be 22 degrees, 21 degrees, 30 degrees, 6 degrees, or where numbers like stock prices or anything else is involved, whether how much a person would spend on something, what would be the behavior of this, or what would maybe something related to healthcare. So here we understand a relation between the variables and we create a model based on their relationship and what would happen if the other variable changes. basically. Classification model is where usually we have buckets. For example, if an email is spam or not. So it's just two classification, whether the day is gonna be hot or cold, or sunny or rainy, or let's say whether the person would buy a or order or will not order. Simple yes or no, or maybe 3-4 buckets. For example, if it's a rating thing, then 1 to 5, out of 1 to 5, how much a person would rate or give a feedback or something like that. So depends. Both models are very equally useful, but depends on what we are calculating or what is our end goal is. If we have to calculate what would be the number of as we had to influence our deaths, then we'll probably go for a regression model compared to a classification one. Or if it is like related to weather, if it's like gonna be a sunny day or a rainy day, then probably we'll go for classification model. That's all the questions. Thank you for listening.